Maybe. Hey guys, we are live with David Thomas Tao here on Bono Stuff, where the theme is to teach Bo more stuff. So Tao, teach me something. We're going to talk about a few topics, but how are you today? You are in Brooklyn.
I am in Brooklyn. We're back in the office a little bit, gradually opening back up in Dumbo. So I'm in like a weird ad hoc recording studio, but I'm really excited to redo our office post-pandemic. And I got to say, it's an honor to be on Bo Knows Stuff, because over the years, I've learned much more from Bo than Bo's learned from me. So as far as I can tell, this is to try and correct the differential a little bit, maybe tip the scales back, but it's going to be a lot of work. I don't know how long we have for that.
I'll have to kind of half say maybe I didn't learn as much directly from the mouth of David Tao, but I learned a lot from like the things you've created and done. Maybe we can go off of that.
You've learned by elimination, right? Like, oh, don't do that. Oh, yeah. Don't do that. Yeah. Don't do that.
But to be fair, you created one of the top fitness websites in the world. Where are we at now? Number 4? Was it number 4?
I don't know. It's tough because like there are all these different categories, right? There's health and fitness. There's health and wellness, which is big, and then there's health and fitness, which is narrower. Then there's fitness, which is narrower. Then there's strength training, which is narrower. Then there's strength sports, which is narrower than that. And we've kind of been like working up the rungs. So for a while, it was like strength sports, we were the biggest. Then strength training, we were kind of the biggest. And now we're like inching up to where we're kind of in that realm of like fitness, where among the bigger ones.
Big. It's a pretty big realm.
Yeah, but if you get up to the top of that, like health and wellness, it's like WebMD and
is Livestrong still up there?
I haven't.
They used to be.
They used to be like the thing. Used to be. They were like the powerhouse content creators.
Yeah.
I don't think they're what they used to be. Don't quote me on that, but I haven't like seen them pop up in a lot of searches.
That's all right.
The thing is, like, Google's gotten very good at, because we're an organic site, right? Most of our traffic comes from like social media or Google or other websites, and like Google and other websites have gotten much better, right, at referring traffic. It's like there's more than one place to get information these days, which is great. But 11 years ago, when I kind of got started in the industry, it was like just Livestrong. They had like the one article on this thing, so everyone was like, "Oh, why do you need to write another article on that? There's already an answer to it." Turns out the answers weren't always that good.
Right. Yeah. And again, back to that time frame, I think the big things in the more niche maybe was the Testosterone Nation. Yep. What were some of the other? Breaking Muscle.
I mean, these are all still around, right? Yeah, these are all like, and some of them still have like really, really good content. Men's Health is still very big, but they're more of a, like, Men's Health produces a lot of like celebrity gossip content now. Like,
who's training what?
Or, it's even like Shia LaBeouf is dating this person. And like, you'll find that on Men's Health now. Which creates a lot of traffic. They still write like the fitness content, but they write just a lot of the men's mags went to very general content, because that's where I think where advertising dollars were. We don't do that. So we're like still technically niche. Right. I think that's what makes us niche, is that we don't write like Harry Styles is wearing this new jacket and it's crazy. Like,
yeah. Well, you had was it when Trump Jr. deadlifted like 400 pounds? You'll throw some of that in there. Or he did Murph and claimed he did it in like 27 minutes, and that would have been like 5 minutes faster than any other person in the world.
We did. I think we did write about that, basically to put it in context as far as like, so that didn't happen. That almost certainly didn't happen. If you want to read the article, cool. And the article is just like, nope.
Nope.
For reference, no. But sure.
I will share this, talking about that past time or whatever, when Men's Health used to be a real, I guess, fitness or
that's not to say they don't produce great stuff. Still, they still produce some really great stuff. I just they do write on a wider range of a very wide range of stuff outside of what I would call.
They pivoted a bit. Can we use that?
I would say they broadened. I would say that like they write like men's interest stuff, not just men's health.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like they always sort of kind of did that. So what I was going to say is back in like 2004, maybe when I was a senior in college, just to date myself. I think I got a subscription, and I got the year subscription, and I literally would highlight articles, and that was like stuff where I was again, I did an independent study at my university of exercise physiology. So I was reading that exercise physiology textbook, and then I was kind of supplementing it with Men's Health and going through some of their stuff. And again, I would one of my best friends who you met with the most annoying dog ever, and he won't listen to this. You know exactly who I'm talking about, and he has the same first name as you, and that's okay. I know he won't listen to this. So hopefully somebody watches and listens to this, and we'll get this back to him.
I was thinking about that friend earlier because he was heavily featured in the WeWork documentary that's out on Hulu.
Yes.
And I was watching that because my good friend, my college roommate, is one of the talking heads in that like is giving the postmortem basically on like WeWork or what happened with their IPO. And then suddenly I see your friend from college who's like working
from high school. From high
school, sorry. And it also, just a quick story. This is an aside from health and fitness. I'm so sorry, folks. I looked back in my email, and you invited me. You were very nice, and you invited me to WeWork summer camp in 2013, and I said no. Big mistake, but in hindsight, I'm so glad because a lot of footage from that showed up in this Hulu documentary.
I haven't watched it. Did you see me in there at all? Because I was there.
You were not there, but like I
was there, but I wasn't.
You were there. But I look really strange, and I had a giant afro at the time, so there's 100% chance I would have ended up in that documentary and like not wanted to be. But I was thinking about that because other David, your high school friend, is in that doc. He's like, his face, I don't think he actually speaks in it, but like he's in the background of like
a lot
of the shots.
Yeah. So that is a thing. But yes, very annoying dog. And I was bringing him up. I was trying to go back to how we got down that path. He saw me in college with my like pages of like ripped out Men's Health, like, tabs and notes and things. I eventually was like, oh, maybe this isn't the best source of information. Maybe I should go to like medical journals and things like that as I got more evolved in my scientific pursuit of excellence and all that good stuff. So anyway, that was kind of the aside there. So we didn't even mention, I think you might have accidentally mentioned it, but yes, the website that we were talking about that David actually co-founded, technically, yes, is Bar Bend, which I still remember visiting New York City from when I was in Dubai, and I went and met up with you at Five Napkin Burger.
Either Five Napkin or Five Guys. We've been to both
Five
together.
Napkin. It was the Five Napkin off 14th and
the sit down. Yeah, the nicer sit down place. Yes.
Yeah, and you told me about this Bar Bend concept. I was like, oh, that's cool. And then and then it turned into this pretty big thing as it did, and because most of what David puts his energy behind, I think, can be very successful if it is not other negative energies around it. Anyway, not every project is going to work out, but the point being that yes, he co-founded this thing that is a pretty big deal. And again, I'll just thank you on behalf of most of the fitness world for having this resource specifically covering all these strength sports where again, there was no coverage. And again, if you had to do a Google search, it was just difficult to get some of this information. And so again, the coverage of CrossFit, which I'm a big fan of, I would think that some of my people listening here are fans of, general health and wellness. And again, allowing me to contribute somewhat and having other, even much better than me, contributors to, how to improve your sleep, how to improve your joint health, things like that. So, and on top of that, again, I'm one of the biggest fans, I would say, of your podcast. I'm just glad to have you here, and hopefully we can have a little more productive conversation than all this reminiscing. Sorry, I have to go down the path there.
No, I think the reminiscing is important because I think that like your experience with health and fitness content in college was from a very different time, and like some stuff has changed, some stuff hasn't changed, and we talk about it's easy to look back on like the old the T Nations of the world, which is still around and it's like still a big site. It's easy to go like, oh, that's an old site. Remember that? But that's how a lot of very influential people in fitness today first found an audience online. I think of people like Tony Gentleman.
Yep, exactly.
I think of people like Dan John, right? And I count Tony as a good friend. Dan, I've actually never met him in person, but he's been on the podcast and we chat fairly regularly.
And you did his, and we both did his 10,000 swing challenge.
Oh, I did not do his 10,000 swing challenge. I did a version of it. His was actually probably tougher. But all that to say, those sites are it's still important, right? Because what we're trying to do at this stage in Barben's 5 years old right now, right? We are trying to now think of, like, when we started, we just wanted to kind of disrupt and fill the gaps that we thought were in the space, at that time. Now we actually found ourselves looking ahead to say, okay, what are the gaps that we can fill 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now? And full disclosure, Barben, we're actually going on a bit of a hiring spree starting literally today. We opened up some jobs today, some job descriptions, and they're jobs to try and preempt what gaps we want to fill 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, not just expand what we already do. So I actually love that you brought these up, because what didn't exist was what we took inspiration from back then, and we're actually trying to get back in that mindset, because after 5 years, things can kind of get a little stale. You can kind of sit back on your heels. So it's cool you brought that up.
As Wayne Gretzky said, don't go to where the puck is, go to where the puck is going.
I haven't figured that out yet, and if you actually see me try and ice skate, it's pretty funny, but it makes a lot of sense. And he's what was he, the great one?
The great one, yes.
The great one.
I don't want to mess that up, because I know any hockey fan in the world will be very upset if we mess that up. But
hockey fans don't listen to podcasts. That's a fact.
That's true. Fact. Scientific fact. Another throwback I'll show you is I didn't do this on purpose, but this was, do you remember this shirt?
Oh, the Team Dangerous shirt.
Yeah. I think the rabbit is on the back. So any of those Team Dangerous folks are out there. That was another little social community in the CrossFit space around where David and I met in the 2010s, early 2010s. And yeah.
Which was really cool, because at the time, a lot of folks, CrossFit was taking off, and people didn't know what to do with that. They were like, cool, I see these people in the gym, but I want to be friends with them and interact with them outside of the gym. How do we create space for that? And so all these different communities were popping up, and the big one in New York was called Team Dangerous, and I'm still very close with it, and Bo is too, with the folks who founded that. And it is no more; it doesn't exist anymore in that form. But it was cool, because at the time, you'd spend your hour in the gym, and this was an outlet to kind of interact with people that you meet in the gym outside of the gym that you might have other things in common with. These days, I think the answer to that is just people spend more time in a gym. So back then it was like you'd go to CrossFit and then you'd leave. These days, I think people go to CrossFit gyms or powerlifting gyms, and they just stay there for hours and hours and hours and treat them like coffee shops and social hangouts.
Yeah. On the foam rolling and just laying there on the foam roller, kind of jabbing away.
I'm gonna do some accessory work.
Yeah,
exactly. Sure.
Yeah, I'm working on my strict ring muscle ups or what have you. Anyway,
my mobility.
Yes, that's a fun word. Since you're hopefully, I think we can say you have the pulse, your finger on the pulse of the fitness world in terms of the way things are coming back from COVID. I do want to shift over to that question of, and we're recording this. Oh, Austin McDoer says, thanks, Doc. Not sure why he's saying thanks to me, but okay. Maybe it's the shout out. I don't know. Anyway, but the question being, with the COVID return is, and I do want to talk about the kettlebell sport and how that's been an interesting thing for an adaptation, again, pivot with the way COVID went. But in terms of returning to gyms and strongman growing and all these different kind of whatever we want to call them, auxiliary sports, is that a term that's acceptable? Maybe strongman. I
wouldn't call them auxiliary. Implies that they're like a complement to something else.
Yeah, maybe
they're standalones.
Okay, sure. Yes, that's fair. I don't want to disrespect anything there, but so we have powerlifting, strongman, Olympic weightlifting. I'm sure I'm missing CrossFit, of course. But yeah, in terms of all those, how are they all kind of coming back strong? Again, I know you signed up for kettlebell sport competition a few months from now. Again, I'm pretty in touch with the CrossFit space that seems to be working its way back to pretty full strength. So yeah, tell me how you feel about all the sports. Are there ones that are lagging behind based on their nature, or?
So I think some are coming back very strong. Weightlifting is coming back very strong. Actually, USA Weightlifting announced that Nationals in late June, early July in Detroit is going to be fully live. They were all on virtual events, and then they did a hybrid event in Salt Lake City where it was like a mix of online and some in-person competitors, a limited capacity. Nationals is going to be in person, which I'm very, very excited about. I will probably be there running some color commentary. Um, and I think weightlifting has done well because there have been a lot of remote competitions. Folks have had a year to work on, like, to really work on the gains. Actually, right now we have simultaneously Pan Am's and the Asian Championships going on, like when we're recording this, and just records are falling left and right because no one's competed in a year and they've gotten to just like work on their strength.
Yeah.
I think weightlifting is going to come back very strong. I think the Olympics will help with that, at least domestically this year. We have a very strong looking team that could actually win some medals in Tokyo, and that always does a lot for weightlifting in the United States. Every time we have medal success, it there's a media buzz around that, and it lifts the profile of the sport. So I think that's really cool. We've got a lot of folks who can medal at the Olympics this year, which is very, very neat. I think strongman is doing fine. I think that it is bouncing back well. I think that they were able to have World's Strongest Man last year. It was delayed, but they were able to have it in a bubble and kind of build it for TV. They're going to have it in Sacramento this year, kind of more in the normal time in the summer as opposed to the winter or late fall. And I think it's going to bounce back just fine. And I know strongman has grown a lot locally in the U.S. over the last couple of years and has continued to do so, especially when it comes to like amateur competitions, women's competitions, things like that. Powerlifting is interesting in that it was growing rapidly, and I'm not sure of the numbers right now, but there have been a lot of like breakaway federations. USA Powerlifting is not getting along with the International Powerlifting Federation right now. So it's a little unclear, like domestically in the United States, what's going to happen with drug tested powerlifting. So powerlifting is like, I'd say doing quite well, but it's like TBD what the future of that is from an organizational standpoint right now. To be fair, weightlifting has gone through its own.
Yeah, I was going to kind of chime in on that and say, again, you guys obviously, and anyone not familiar with some of the drama and storylines going on there, definitely Barben's been covering a lot of that. So it's been interesting trying to keep up with some of that.
It is a little strange because we are obviously very close with the USA Weightlifting. That's disclosed. Everyone knows that. We're very open about that. We are like officially partnered with them. Like we have a contract with them and they have a contract with us. It's interesting though, because USA Weightlifting is one of several national governing bodies that are at odds with the International Weightlifting Federation in many ways right now. And there's been a lot of controversy at the international level of weightlifting. I don't want to go too much into that here. You can go to Barbend and find out more about that. But suffice it to say, it's unclear what's going to happen with the sport internationally, although I will say weightlifting seems to be stronger than ever. Hey, thanks, Shane. I try and have my finger on the pulse. Shane has his finger on the pulse, actually. Thanks for the comment, Shane. And I think the sport's very strong in the United States. Internationally, there's been a lot of call for reform. We will see what happens. And then CrossFit obviously has undergone the most change, but also the least change, right? Because CrossFit is now a company that is no longer owned by Greg Glassman. But at the same time, it's a company where the competition was, and the trademark was still just owned by one company. There are not like splinter cell, not large, like other federations running CrossFit competitions. They can't because they don't own the trademark. So CrossFit is still very much like there's one CrossFit season, there's one CrossFit Games. It's changed because of the pandemic, but it's still very much like focused in. Organizational changes at CrossFit, I think we're still going to see a lot to come. And they've announced a lot to come. And I think that the relationship between CrossFit and CrossFit affiliates is going to be evolving a lot over the next year.
There's a lot of optimism for sure.
I don't know exactly what those changes are. I just want to clarify, like, I don't have the crystal ball here, but I think that there's a lot that's going to be changing based on CrossFit's new ownership. And then the last thing I'll say is that I think the pandemic is actually going to be a net positive. Not that the pandemic's a net positive in any way, but I think that the pandemic
The
has
silver lining, maybe.
the silver lining of the pandemic is that people have started to explore other strength sports that are a bit more obscure. One of those is Moss wrestling. Actually, bit of a heads up, Barbara's going to be opening up a lot more content on Moss wrestling soon, which I'm really excited about.
I thought you were going to say opening up Moss wrestling facilities across the United States.
Those would probably be the cheapest facilities you could open because you need like a board. That's all you need. A board and do you have a floor and a board? you can set up a Moss wrestling center.
I really encourage anyone who has not seen it or been or not familiar with what it is to just Google that one. You can pause this, or if you're live, don't pause it. But yeah,
Google Barbend plus Moss wrestling. We actually have, I think, the best explainer as to what Moss wrestling is. I think it's awesome, and I think it's something that a lot of folks have been exploring in quarantine because, like, you only need one competitor. You can hold a competition like at your gym,
right.
Or with a friend.
And spell that for folks.
MAS.
That's it.
Mas.
Like more in Spanish.
Like Taco Bell's old slogan, "Live Mas."
Live Mas. That's right.
Which is anyway. And then the other sport that I think is actually growing a lot because of the pandemic is kettlebell sport.
Yes.
Not just like kettlebell training, not just doing kettlebell swings, but like the actual kettlebell sport, which we can talk about in a second. But that is a sport that is basically like had a ton of competitions during COVID because it's a sport where you're standing in one place doing the same thing over and over again. It's basically built to have virtual competitions. Like if you have a smartphone, you can compete in kettlebell sport internationally. And while I do think in-person competitions for that are very cool and something people are excited about, folks have been training more at home. They've been buying up kettlebells like hotcakes, and
they are a hot commodity.
And if you're like me, you have kettlebells at home and you're like, well, what can I do with this? That's more than just like, I want something to train for. I want a goal to work for. And hence kettlebell sport, I think, has become more popular, and especially coming out of the pandemic will be more popular because folks have had more exposure to kettlebells. They're looking for more opportunities to train at home. But at the same time, you train at home for long enough, it can get boring. You need a goal to work toward. So I think kettlebell sport is poised for a big breakout here in the United States. In Russia, which is a place Bo and I
have some connection to.
Kettlebell sport is much bigger and much more popular and is firmly established. But in the United States, not quite so much.
Is it the way of the kettlebell, Pavel Tsatsuin? The way of the maybe I'm mixing that up.
Yeah, it's controversial because he is not a kettlebell sport practitioner.
No, he's just a kettlebell
training.
Yes.
Yeah. Got it. Well, he's what they call hard style. We can get into that difference in a second here.
Just a lot of
It's a lot of GPP, a lot of general, like how to use kettlebells to basically bulletproof your body. So it's a lot of like, if you're training in the military and you have 10 minutes a day to work out, how do you optimize that? And there are a lot of really cool things you can do with that, but that's like hard style kettlebell training.
Right.
It's kettlebell training for other stuff, whereas kettlebell sport is you are literally just trying to get as efficient as possible at doing one of 3 movements with kettlebells. And that is it. So like for Olympic weightlifting, you're trying to get as efficient as possible to lift maximal loads across 2 lifts. In kettlebell sport,
it is kind of 3. I mean, the clean and jerk. I always
in kettlebell sport, the clean and the jerk are like there's the snatch, there's the clean and jerk, and then there's just the jerk. Right. In kettlebell sport, you're trying to do as many reps as possible at the same weight in a given time period. So you're trying to get as efficient as possible, but it's so you can lift the most weight over time.
Our old troll friend Craig Pugh chiming in.
Oh,
Craig, Jeff Martone.
Craig, what a name! Haven't heard that name in a while.
Yes. Pew 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 pew. I do. I did always enjoy those pew pews.
For those who don't know what kettlebell sport, just to give like a background, kettlebell sport is you're generally using 2 bells. Now, women and men can compete in single bell disciplines. And actually the snatch is always a single bell, but kettlebell sport is, there are 2 main versions. One's called long cycle, which is 10 minutes of clean and jerks with 1 or 2 bells, normally 2 these days. So 10 minutes of clean and jerks. You cannot put the bells down. Like, you don't get on clean and jerks. You don't get like, you can't like put the bells down, shake it out, get back on. Once you pick up the bells, you're started. As soon as the bells leave your hands, basically you're done. So you try and go for the full 10 minutes and do as many reps as possible. Amateurs, which is what I'm training at now, usually compete with like 24 kilo bells, but you can compete with 8 kilobells, 12, 16, 20. And then pros compete with 32 kilobells. And then there's the biathlon, which is 10 minutes of snatch, and you get to switch hands once, but you still can't put the bell down. And then you come back later in the day and you do just 10 minutes of jerks with either 1 or 2 bells, and you can't put them down. So the biathlon is like, it's 2 disciplines over and you're competing for 2 10-minute sessions. The long cycle, you're just competing for 1 10-minute session. And the reason being, if you do 10 minutes of long cycle at your full capacity, you ain't doing anything else that day.
Yeah. And it's been 10 minutes. I'm just interested about the domain, the time domain. It's been 10 minutes for pretty much very long time.
There are a lot of variations coming. Yeah. 10 minutes is like the standard.
Well, and that's long cycle. Sorry.
The long cycle, snatch, and biathlon. So it's
10 minutes.
like, it's 10 minutes. So if your long cycle is 10 minutes, and then on the biathlon, 10 minutes of snatch.
Is there a short cycle?
Short cycle is sometimes referred to as that's just what you refer to as the jerk, but the time domain is the same.
Still 10 minutes. Oh, okay.
So, also, I think I'm incorrect, by the way. On biathlon, you jerk first, and then you come back and snatch.
Okay.
Later on. Sorry, I had this flipped. But the long cycle is just referring to the movement, not the time domain. So normally it's 10 minutes, but there are a lot of competitions these days where it's like you can compete and train in 5-minute sets.
Right.
There are marathons where you go for like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I've seen one competition where it was someone went for the time domain was 2.5 hours. It's like, how many can you do without putting the bells down in 2.5 hours?
Oof.
So people do all sorts of crazy stuff.
Well, I wanted to kind of hone in on that time domain because, again, my study or branding and my practice when I work with clients has a lot to do with redefining fitness or how we look at fitness, especially over the long term. So I know you're familiar with the Cooper test, which is one of the more standardized, I guess, tests in the exercise physiology space, which is a 12-minute time domain. It's done a lot with police, law enforcement, military. Basically, usually it's just how far can you run in 12 minutes. And then an additional component might be how quickly does your heart rate recover. So it's really interesting to me when we're talking about this definition of fitness. And again, even to the CrossFit side, without being, sometimes too dogmatic about the language, which I know sometimes throws some people off, but just talking about the concept of how much work can you get done in a 10-minute space. And if we change, okay, cool, we have 3 different things we're doing in 10-minute spaces. And if you can do 52 reps, I don't know what a good score is. Sorry. If you can do 52 reps and you can do 52 reps and I can do 50 reps, you're 2 reps fitter than me on that test, right? So then we can keep playing around in that CrossFit kind of style of, okay, cool, but then I can do more burpees than you in 7 minutes or what have you. So anyway, it's just an interesting thing to me about the 10-minute time domain, comparing it to this 12-minute kind of global Cooper test, which I think is one of the biggest measures of overall cardiovascular fitness for the long term. So yeah, I don't know. I was pontificating, I guess, and going down some rabbit holes there. I don't know if you have any thoughts on it.
I mean, I think it's a really cool thing. I think it's the fact that like it's 10 minutes, it's the same weight. You can really compare apples to apples with like everyone around the world, right? Like if you set a world record, if you do the most reps in long cycle in kettlebell sport, right? Of anyone, like if you set a world record, you've truly set a world record, right? And there are body weight classes, right?
Right.
But it's I don't know. I think it's kind of neat. It's like, I think the fact that the workouts are just the same, like it's kind of boring to watch. That's why they're trying to mix it up, do more different time domains, like add different things to the sport. But ultimately, it's kind of neat to know that everyone's competing at the same thing, often with the same weights, and you can just really like measure you can measure your progress over the years because it's the same thing. It's the same thing over and over and over again, which is like same with powerlifting and weightlifting.
Or I think the more common thing that comes to mind for me is just, like a 400-meter run or a 1-mile run, where again, it is, you're running the same distance I'm running. Yeah. And it's just, okay, you did it 30 seconds faster than me. So, I need to train that. But it's the changing of domains to, so I know I've heard you speak about making it more of a viewer-friendly sport. So again, for people to watch, a track event, usually you can see like, oh, that person's coming from behind. And like, that's what makes it. And that's when people are actually sharing it on Facebook of like, watch this a student from University of Michigan come from behind against this Ohio State person. Like, oh, there. So yeah, you could, and I think I heard you guys talk about that on one of the Barbend podcasts of like, can you have that head-to-head kind of competition, maybe making it a little bit more of a friendly sport for viewers on top of the benefits of everything it's doing fitness-wise and just the coolness of saying, having that accountability of saying, you know what, Tao started doing kettlebell sport 6 months ago. I'm recovering from COVID. So I'm going to take up this sport because I'm trying to get my lungs back. So, but yeah, I'm going to try to catch Tao because I don't like Tao being able to do anything better than me. So, and for anyone, and that goes way back many years to many workouts, him, I, and the Phantom of the Opera, Paul, who said he was going to be watching. That was the workout group that we had many fun days and sing-alongs in the gym. We don't need to talk about that though, where Paul would criticize my tenors and such. Anyway, but back to kettlebell sport. So anyway, did you have other things about kettlebell sport? Sorry if I
no, I was just saying it's been a lot of fun to train for, and it's something that I actually feel a little bit like I'm dropping a weight class for my first. I signed up for my first in competition in October in Minneapolis, the Twin Cities Kettlebell Sport Open. Shout out to the folks up at Twin Cities Kettlebell Club. And no, I think it's a really neat sport that also I think addresses something that I was getting a little tired of in strength, which is just moving toward like maximal strength, which tends to go down at a certain point. You kind of peak in the Olympic lifts before you peak in powerlifting. Some powerlifters don't peak until they're like 50s, honestly.
Right.
But I wanted something that felt a little bit more athletic and had more of a cardiovascular component. But I also wanted something that was competitive, and maybe a little easier on my joints. Not to say kettlebell sport's super easy on the joints, but I was just
super easy on the back of the wrist.
Definitely. You learn.
You adapt to that.
But I don't know. I was just taking a beating, like going to CrossFit classes, doing 150 box jumps and kipping pull-ups. Like I was just taking a beating, and I think kettlebell sport is a sport that's based around maximizing movement efficiency. And if you have something that's wrong with your movement, any kind of shearing force or something, as an example, that's inefficient, you're going to feel it over thousands of reps.
Right.
So you fix it. And you're ultimately looking for a movement that is easier to do and easier on the body. And you're trying to actually put in less effort with each rep you do and learn how to do that. So it's a sport that really does promote longevity. And you actually see a lot of kettlebell sport people take up kettlebell sport like in their 30s, as I did. And it becomes a lifelong endeavor. And, they're competing into people are competing into their 70s, often at lighter weights.
Yeah.
But it's something where it does not necessarily require the impact of like sprinting or box jumps or high impact gymnastics.
Yeah. No, and that's one thing that I was thinking of as you were talking is it's this really cool combination of strength and endurance. Yeah. So you have this extreme of chasing 1 rep maxes, and almost no difficulty breathing. Obviously, as you do the heavy lift, your heart rate's jacking up. But 10-minute cycle, again, that interesting combination too. And the 12-minute Cooper test is just something that's been there for a long time. So I don't know that 12 minutes, and this is why I kind of brought that up, or where my mind was going with it, is 12 minutes is not necessarily the definitive measure for your fitness. If you're fitter in 10 minutes versus 12 minutes, like that doesn't make you any less fit per se. So anyway, but I find it very interesting that it is this combination where, again, a lot of people go to running or some form of cardio as their form of fitness. And so, and a lot of times the physio community says, hey, maybe you want to supplement some strength in there, to balance that out. So this kettlebell sport could be a very interesting thing. The other thing I wanted to ask you is, did you notice any imbalances left to right? Did this bring that about?
Yeah.
Did you get assessed for some of that? Is that, that's definitely my kind of,
So my coach is, I actually just recently switched coaches because I am training for a competition, and I wanted someone who I was working with a coach virtually, which was awesome. But training for a competition, I wanted someone to work locally. Actually, we're kind of trying to start to get a kettlebell sport team together in person in New York City to train together. So I wanted someone who kind of lived close by, and we could do in-person trainings, once a week or once every other week.
Anybody in the New York City area, If you want to join in, jump in.
Please let us know. We New York City is very interesting in that it does not currently have a kettlebell sport team, but it has multiple world champions in kettlebell sport.
Wow. Yeah.
Of like which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, but bringing together that's missing, like, again, that Team Dangerous kind of almost connection.
My coach is won a world championship with 24 kilo bells a few years ago. He's been in the sport for nearly a decade. He's a master of sport, which is a designation given by like the Russian sporting governing body to indicate that you have reached a certain level of ability, which is kind of cool. It's kind of like a sports doctorate in a way, but for accomplishment in the sport.
Right.
And so I just started with him about a month ago, and over the course of this like 7-month training cycle we're doing to get me prepped for this competition, the first 2 months are all about addressing imbalances. And it's a lot of, I actually am only training in kettlebell sport like twice a week right now. The other 4 workouts I have are just addressing imbalances or monostructural cardio.
Nice.
Because I have, as you know, Bo, a ton of imbalances.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of I guess trick question, sort of, almost. I was trying to, but I was genuinely curious, like, what you are doing about it. So yeah, no, again, having known David for coming up on 11 years, maybe, I would say.
Coming up on
10. I think it was 2011-ish.
We met in 2012.
2012.
So
okay.
we are coming up on
9.
Nine.
And what is that? The brass anniversary? Should I get you something brass?
Should
I get you a brass monkey? No.
I think I'm allergic to brass. So like I can't wear like brass belt buckles or like brass jewelry. Not that I really wear jewelry, but
I'll have to double check what the 9-year anniversary is.
I'll just take gold things. Just go ahead and upgrade it.
Okay. It is Maha and I's 3-year wedding anniversary, which traditionally is leather. So I will leave it at that.
Leather also works. Leather's great.
So you want some leather stuff? Okay, I got you. I got you.
Give me some leather. I actually need to get a new belt because they make belts specifically for kettlebell sport, and the best ones are handmade out of like a very soft, malleable leather because the belt's not very like tight. You have to you wear it for like in a specific way. So,
well, hold on. You're trying to drop a weight class, so I'll wait for you to.
That's when I
finish.
I haven't actually ordered like a custom because they'll like size them custom to you, so they fit around like your iliac crest like perfectly. I haven't ordered mine because I'm still like I still have like 9 pounds to drop. So I don't want to order it and then like spend $200 on a custom leather handmade kettlebell sport belt and then just like it not fit.
I gotcha. So then, how does the bourbon that you post about every single day fit into?
I don't drink every day. I just want to clarify.
You don't drink. You just post about it, and you seem to be certainly using it as a platform to just engage in more conversation around something that you're very passionate about, which is a beautiful thing when we can utilize the wonders of social media for positive things. So yeah, tell us all about the bourbon trade.
I don't know if I'm the biggest industry expert, but I grew up I was born in Kentucky and I grew up in Bardstown, Kentucky. And for those who have ever done like the Bourbon Trail or know anything about bourbon, Bardstown, Kentucky is the center of the Bourbon Trail. It is the bourbon capital of the world. In fact, the elementary school I went to was literally right across from the Barton Distillery. The town smelled like sour mash, which is what which is how you ferment bourbon. So it was very much a part of my upbringing. It was like the thing my town was based on, right? And the fact that bourbon has exploded and become so popular in the past decade, really since we've known each other, Bo, is really interesting because the town has grown accordingly. So I grew up in this town that like no one cared about, that made this drink that was like very much a bottom shelf thing. And then bourbon kind of exploded. It became this thing. And my experience with it growing up was very different because it was like, you wanted a tour of the distillery. These days they have visitor centers and like, all these like special tourism packages for people who are interested in bourbon tourism. Bourbon tourism was not a thing when I was growing up, right? Yeah. You wanted a tour of a distillery, like you knocked on the door, someone came off the line and like, it was like showed you around. Like it was very low tech. And the fact I like sharing about bourbon I'm drinking, about experiences I'm having. with bourbon because it keeps me connected to where I grew up, and I think it's a different perspective. For example, this past weekend I was out at my favorite bar in New York City, which I don't think you've ever been to, Bo. Next time you're in town, we got to go.
What was the
It's
name?
in
The bar? You posted, I think, on
yeah.
one of the social media.
It's in Carroll Gardens. It's called Travel Bar.
Yes.
An amazing selection of whiskeys from around the world. And I went to Travel Bar this past weekend with a few friends, and over the course of 2 hours, I met 4 different people who worked in the bourbon whiskey industry, right? Because this bar is kind of a known entity. So if you come to New York, you go by this bar, try to get them to carry your bottles and things like that. And the owner of Travel Bar, who I know, would be like, "Oh, David, come meet this person from Barrel Craft Spirits, or come meet this person from Nashville Barrel Company who's visiting." And what he would say is he would introduce me as a guy from Bardstown, Kentucky. And the conversation you have with people is very different because it kind of tells people, "Oh, I'm not into bourbon because it's like the cool thing to be into," and showing
I was born there. It's my birthright.
Yeah, because the thing to do now is, like, I see Instagram influencers who are in the fitness industry, like, go posting pictures of their Pappy Van Winkle bottles. Like, okay, you overpaid for a bottle of bourbon. Cool. Like, good for you, man. Right?
Yeah.
Some liquor store is super happy to have you as a customer. That's great. That's not why I'm in it. It's very much part of what I grew up around, and I hope to be able to bring people a perspective that's a little bit more authentic, and to show people that, like, you don't have to spend $2,000 on a bottle of bourbon to get a great bourbon, right? Like, there are amazing bourbons that I think everyone can enjoy that are incredibly complex and are true pieces of craftsmanship, and they're $35 at your local liquor store. Like, it's you can. I love trying the expensive stuff, right? But nothing is like, I have never had a bourbon that is $2,000 a bottle better than like Knob Creek 9, which Knob Creek 9 year, which is like $35.
Yeah. Is that one of the top recommendations for folks? Just grab a Knob Creek 9 if you haven't had it.
If you have a bottle of Knob Creek 9 year at home, it'll run you under $40 most places. Great. It will make everyone happy, whether they like cocktails, neat, on the rug. I will come over to your place and drink it if you're offering. Great. If you want a great rye, people are into rye whiskey. Awesome. High West Double Rye is under $40 a bottle, and it is amazing. Like, go grab some, And guess what? Those 2 bottles, you spent $75 total, and you have a world-class American whiskey bar. Congratulations.
Nice. I'm gonna go out and get both of those. I sent you the picture. I tried the Colorado whiskey that was made here. But anyway,
Colorado, which one did you send? I forget which.
I don't remember the name of it right now. We can do a virtual walk through my house and go grab it if you want.
I just picked up a bottle of Breckenridge and I'm really excited about.
Oh yeah,
and
that's a famous skiing area here that we have to check out.
Colorado 291 is also they've become very popular and are putting out a lot of really cool stuff these days.
Again, we just moved here, so we want to try everything local, and it's Fireside straight bourbon whiskey.
Oh, I have not had that.
Mile High Spirits. I don't know. Oh, the thing is all backwards, the camera. Crazy StreamYard.
It's actually
anyway.
Yeah. I've not, but that's the thing. That's the thing I love about American whiskeys is that, like, it's very tied to place. It's really interesting, and I think for people who, like, I know people who are really into wine who have been getting into American whiskeys. I know it's just a good time to get into it. It's like it's a very fun hobby. Drink responsibly, but you don't have to drink a ton, right? You can sample 2 bourbons in a night with some friends, have a good conversation, and like have just awesome experiences. You don't have to drink your bourbon as shots like a lot of us did in college.
Yeah. Picklebacks. I like.
Oh God, I hate picklebacks.
Come on. All right. I did want to jump back to unless there's anything specific you wanted to finish off with on the bourbon, but I think we covered that pretty well. I did want to ask about your mentioning that with the break in Olympic weightlifting competition, there was a bunch of records that were broken at the newer competition a couple of days ago. I know. Was it a lot in the 49 kilo class? Yes.
Well, there are 2 international competitions going on right now. Actually, there are, Europeans was a couple weeks ago. Now we have the Asian Championships and Pan Ams going on basically simultaneously, like almost like they're overlapping significantly. And like our our editorial team, like we're having trouble keeping up with all the records. World records at the Asian Championships, many Pan American and American records at the Pan Ams. And it's just because a lot of people, I mean, here's the reason, right? Like a big reason. It might be multifactorial, but when you are training in weightlifting and when you have to compete frequently, which high level athletes have had to recently because the Olympic qualification standard now means you have to compete more often in order to qualify for the Olympics, you are peaking for that next competition, but that does not necessarily mean you have a lot of time to increase your strength because you always have to be fresh for the next competition. Right. But what you've had is people who have not competed in over a year. So they've had a year to just go on longer training cycles, to work on their weaknesses, to like build back from the ground up. They haven't had to like do little mini peaks for competitions. And so they're coming out and they're lifting ridiculous weights and setting new records because they've just been in the gym for the past year and they haven't had to like deload or prep for other competitions. It's outstanding.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I was wondering of, you know, and I'd love to see, maybe I'll if you guys would allow me to dive deep into a Barbend article, but I would love to see a Barbend article kind of exploring that concept from an exercise physiology standpoint. And it's something that, again, in the CrossFit space, especially with the more aged athletes, that OPEX, and you had James Fitzgerald on your podcast, and he was my coach around the time that I first had a coach, and when you and I were working out. And Lexi's jumping in here. Tao doesn't really love my dog for some reason.
I'm not a dog person.
Not a dog person.
Not a dog person.
Everyone just kind of turned off the podcast right there. No, but sorry, she's going a little crazy. She just came in from outside. So OPEX, what I was starting to say, which used to be OPT, as a training methodology, they had a lot, again, especially of their more elder, aged athletes, take a full year off to focus on a lot of those things, so they didn't have to be in that training cycle or the competition cycle rather. So it's a fascinating thing. And again, I'm curious if, again, that silver lining of CrossFit is going to change things moving forward to say, sorry, dog playing ball again. To say, hey, like, are you okay with taking this year off? Or again, I know there's 4-year Olympic cycle. You need to qualify for Olympics. Are there ways that we can kind of play around with that where, you show up 8 years later? And again, I know a lot of these, when I took a course actually with Craig Pugh, who was in the comments there doing a little trolling about Dogecoin and such. Him and I went up to Maine for it was called Behind the Red Curtain or something like that, about the communists. There was a Cuban coach. So it was going behind the wall. And I mean, they had a 16-year Olympic plan. Like if today is 2021, they could tell you what you're going to be doing on April 22nd of 2037. So trying to do some quick math there. Not so quick. But anyway, so I was just wondering, I guess, if you think that'll change anything, or are is it, hey, you're in your prime, we don't want to lose out on too many competitions and you need to just keep pushing the competition side?
I mean, it's different for every sport. Olympic qualification for weightlifting, they've made very clear that athletes will need to compete more regularly than in decades past in order to qualify for the Olympics.
Is that worldwide?
That is worldwide. That is worldwide. Part of that is due to doping regulations. More international competitions means more opportunities to test athletes at an international competition, right? And there is out of competition testing too.
Right.
But that's normally done by the national testing agencies.
Yes.
So this allows for more testing of athletes for performance enhancing and banned substances at international competition. So I think this is the new norm, and that's not going to decrease, I don't think, because weightlifting is still in the hot seat. It is still at risk of losing its Olympic spot because of doping controversy, in addition to other controversies. Ergo, I think that we are going to see athletes for the next quad be required to compete as much, if not more, than this previous quad. that creates a lot of interesting financial implications. It's very expensive to compete internationally. Travel ain't cheap, right?
Right. But
Ain't cheap.
if I can jump in, I guess the question to build or maybe specify more my question is, so can somebody take a 4 years off? And I'm guessing this is done already, and then compete into that next quad and say, you know what I mean?
Sure, they can, but in weightlifting, you have a very short. You only have so many like
Peaks.
Olympic cycles.
Yeah.
Powerlifting is a sport where, heck, David Ricks was setting world records, open world records at age 58 or age 57. Like, dude has been an international level powerlifter for 40 years.
Yeah.
And shows no signs of slowing down. You don't see that in weightlifting. The oldest you will see, I mean, I've seen early 40s at like world weightlifting championships, but that's the exception. The oldest you'll normally see is like mid 30s, and that's old in weightlifting.
Is your buddy Chad Vaughn going to push that envelope, you think?
Chad will never compete in the Olympics again. I'm sorry to say.
Oh, okay. We're talking that level. Sorry. Yeah, but he's still doing pretty good level.
He's still doing well. He nearly won a U.S. national championship at age 39. I was doing commentary for the session, and he was this close. But Masters weightlifting is becoming more of a thing, and I think Masters weightlifting is growing and becoming more competitive, which is great. But weightlifting, you only have so many Olympic cycles, right? Like your prime is your 20s, so it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah. Again, I get the logistics of it, I guess. But seeing that, record-breaking world record setting just from taking a year off, just again, and this is something we talk about a bit in CrossFit, and the, wow, like no one expected based on the exercise physiology textbook for you to be able to do, run a 4-minute mile and, snatch 300 pounds in the same day or whatever. Yeah, there was what was the exact thing? I know you guys covered that one.
Back squat 500 and run under a 5-minute mile.
Yeah, in the same day. Pretty impressive.
Or what Michael Miraglia did was he deadlifted 500 pounds and ran a mile together in under 5 minutes.
Wow.
So he took the weights out to the track.
Ironically, when we visited Iceland and we joked about our buddy Ari. That he had just lost it was a 100-meter sprint, but we said if there was a power clean bar at the end of that or at the beginning,
power clean 100 kilos,
yes,
and then do the run,
he would have definitely won. But yeah, shout out to Ari with youngin. He has a little kiddo. But yeah, good trip to Iceland, by the way.
Great trip.
One of my top trips of life. Hopefully we can all get back there soon for a reunion.
I look back on that very fondly. It was a great trip.
It was a great trip. We would eat blocks of cheese sitting on the corner because the quality of cheese was just phenomenal, and we share that love of food.
Yeah, it was like we would just buy like deli meats and cheese at the grocery store,
and the salmon and packs of salmon.
And packs of salmon. We were like, this is really good. We're just gonna eat this.
Incredible. Yeah.
People were just looking at us like and drinking a carton of milk. I loved the milk they had there.
Yes.
So people were
and the 24-hour hot dog stand.
Yeah, so people were looking like I was sitting on the sidewalk. I got a lot of stares, just like drinking a carton of milk and eating some deli meats and cheese, and everyone was like, "Are you okay?" Like, I'm great, actually.
And we were also there for the listeners during the time of year when it was 24 hours of sunlight, which was interesting, coming out of a club at 3 a.m. and it's perfectly bright out. Like something weird. It's a cool experience. But yeah, anyway, very cool, man. I want to be respectful of your time. Anything else that we didn't cover that you wanted to cover today? Yeah.
Thank you for having me, Bo. It's an honor. If anyone has any questions about barbend, bourbon, kettlebell sport, reach out to me on social media or email me at david@barbend.com. And it's always a pleasure to catch up with you. I'm glad we could do it kind of in a live format. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. I was like, why schedule a regular call when we can schedule a live?
Make it a business call.
That's right.
That's how you know I'll have to say yes.
You'll have to. Yes, exactly. And what was the way you said when we first got on? It's been as long as it needed to be between times we've spoken. But yeah, we do text and keep each other apprised of our workouts and things like that still. So hopefully we keep that going. But yes, thank you again for being on. yeah, guys, go check him out. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to share, like, subscribe. I'll be a little bit more professional about this one day, probably not. I'm not making any promises, but yes, do like, do share, do subscribe, do go follow Barbend and listen. And if you have any fitness related stuff at all, if you want to go check out my content where I contributed to Barbend, there's a few good articles that I think were pretty useful, that still make their way through some, some search engines somehow, some way. Anyway, you can almost say goodbye, but yeah, thanks guys. Get 1% better. Hope this conversation helped you do that, and hopefully Bo knows more stuff now. I don't know. We'll find out soon. Talk to you later. See you, David. Boom. Done.